Hello everyone, good morning. Thanks for coming. Thanks for waking up early today. Not so early, right? Early for me. Well, my name is Ivan. My last name is Lobo, that means wolf. And I've been, I don't want to say anything about my last name, but I've been for 20 years running games events all around the world, especially in Spain, in Barcelona. So I feel very privileged to be here introducing this fantastic games event in London. That is one of the cities that has inspired me more in my career, and the city that actually made me think that it was a good idea to set up an event, a conference in Barcelona, as I said, almost 20 years ago. It's one of the hottest cities on earth in terms of games industry. Today we have 6 hours of content ahead. We try to figure out what would be more interesting for anyone attending the conference, whether you are a professional or an entrepreneur or you want to understand better the industry. And we try to pick up a few topics that we consider that could be inspiring, interesting for almost everyone. There are many more topics that we could have touched, but we decided to touch these topics. We have amazing speakers, pioneers, we have executives, creators, designers among us today, so we're going to be changing from one perspective to the other. We like to think that games are the most important medium of our time, so we try to not only to talk about things, even though this is a London Developers Conference, we try to broaden the scope a little bit and try to inspire people to look in other directions as well, not only in a technical or more development-oriented direction. And I know it's very important in the UK, or that's what they told us, what they normally tell us in abroad, like in Spain. Like if you go to the UK, you have to be always punctual, right in time. You cannot be late. So I'll try to make this show run smoothly. So I'm going to quickly introduce our first guest today, Colin McDonald. Colin is going to speak about the games talent opportunities in London. One of the most important things, of course, to develop talent, to create new careers, new opportunities, not only for those people that are already working or wanting to work in the industry, but maybe for some others that are in other sectors they want to consider joining this amazing industry that is the games industry. Colin is going to explain a little bit what is the current landscape in terms of recruiting in London and give us an idea of what job opportunities, what career opportunities are currently available in the city. So please welcome Colin. Thank you very much. And there might be time for a QA later, but maybe after in the coffee break, right? Depending on how fast you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ivan. Excellent. Can everyone hear me okay? Brilliant. Cool. So for those of you that know me, you might know that I used to travel down from Scotland, where I'm based, to work in London for a day every week for about 6 years. So I got very used to the trains and planes coming down. But with COVID and everything, I was working out, this is only my second visit to London in 4 years. So I'm kind of excited to be back and to be around lots of people again. It's great. My only disappointment is that contactless has taken over so much since I was down before that it's kind of deprived me of my favourite pastime of arguing with shopkeepers that Scottish money is legal tender. I don't seem to be able to do that anymore. I'm very disappointed. It is really cool to be back in London though, and I'm excited to be talking about what I'll explain in a minute. For those of you that don't know me, I've been in the games industry for about 30 years. I think it's 33 years or something now. Mostly on the development side. I started essentially a bedroom business 30 odd years ago. I was an internal development producer up in Dundee at a little company called DMA Design. Actually, out of interest, who knows DMA Design? Few people. Okay, it changed its name to Rockstar. Anyone heard of them? Yeah, a few more, hopefully. Good. So I was producer on the first couple of Grand Theft Auto games, producer on Crackdown, one of the Xbox titles, early version of Lemmings. My London trips were then courtesy of Channel 4 television. I was the games commissioner for about 6 years, doing games for shows like Hollyoaks and Made in Chelsea and films like the Snowman. Most of that was on mobile. Hopefully some of you have played some of those. But I've basically done a little bit of everything. I've done a little bit of development, a little bit of publishing, a little bit of AAA console, a little bit of mobile, kind of right across the whole spectrum. And these days I do a few different things. I work with a couple of different Scottish game developers and tech companies that do tech for games. I advise the UK Games Fund. They're doing some talks up at the career stage later on. I organise Scottish games industry events, so if any of you are from Scotland or want to come up, I've got an event next month. I publish a monthly games opportunities newsletter with details of funding and awards and everything for people running a business or looking to set up a business. I'll give you links to all this stuff at the end. And I also run something called Games Jobs Live, which is what I'm really here to talk to you about. So Games Jobs Live started because of COVID. In about spring 2020, we'd all been sent home and everything was kind of upended. And I work with a lot of different games companies, but also with a lot of people looking for either their first job or a new job. And kind of everyone didn't really seem to know what to do. All the traditional ways of getting into jobs, all the traditional fairs, and even just the way people met, and people were still getting used to Zoom calls and everything was up in the air. So I thought, I need to play around with doing online events. This is kind of the way the world's going. So in, I think it was June 2020, I held the first Games Jobs Live event, which was basically me inviting half a dozen Scottish companies to come onto a live stream, and this just went out free on YouTube. Anyone could tune in. They would come on, they would each present their studios for 5 minutes each, a little bit about who they are, what they've done, what their culture is, and who they're looking for in terms of recruitment. I'd keep them on for another 5 minutes and take some live Q&A from the audience to make it feel alive and interactive. And then we'd basically move on. So the whole thing lasted an hour and a half. No one had to leave the house. I did charge the companies to get involved, but it wasn't a huge amount. So it was exceptionally time and cost efficient. I mean, I've hired, I don't even know, 1,000 people over my years in the industry. And even I was impressed how time and cost effective this proved to be. Candidates didn't have to leave the house. Studios didn't have to leave the house. So we did that first one in Scotland, and it kind of just took off. We're still running the events. I think we've now run something like 50 of these events, all online. Typically get about 500 people along to them, and there's a massive mix. There's a bunch of junior people, there's a bunch of senior people. Interestingly, I get quite a lot of people coming from other industries that are looking to make the jump into games, but aren't quite sure how to do it. They're not, they don't know which shows to come along to, but in terms of tuning into a YouTube live stream for an hour and a half, it's pretty low commitment. So we do get a lot of interest in people coming along. We've had a whole bunch, I think we've had something like 100 different companies present at all these different events, so some quite big names, Sega and Epic and Aardman and whoever else you can see up there, some brilliant companies. And if anyone's interested, all the recordings are still just up on YouTube, so you can literally watch through hundreds of hours of brilliant footage of all these companies presenting themselves if you wanted. We've done events that have been themed by region, so we did a Scottish event, we've done a Midlands event, London event, Brighton event. We've even done some overseas, so we've done Canadian events, we've done ones by tools, so there's been a Unity event or an Unreal event, there was one for remote-only jobs, there's been some tied into conferences, there was like Pocket Gamer Connects events, and then I've partnered with great organisations like Into Games that are hosting the career stage upstairs and the UK Games Fund that run the transfuser program that I mentioned. So they're just one of these relatively straightforward but great return on time and cost investment events. So we'll keep doing those events because they're great. I enjoy doing them. But as soon as we started doing them, people started coming up with loads of other ideas for other things we could do, as well as, under the Games Jobs Live banner. So we started running game jams, because one of the bits of advice that kept coming out of virtually every presentation from the studios was they were recommending people do more game jams. And I mean, there's a game jam you can do every day of the year. But they're obviously different quality, there's different sizes of audience and everything. So the game jams we did, we gave people a bit longer, we gave them a week to make a game. So what came out was something, the games were insanely high quality. I mean, some of them I was surprised, didn't get publishing deals. And I know there was a couple of conversations. People can do something amazing in a week. But we also got industry judges involved. So all these companies that present at the recruitment events, we'd invite them along to be industry judges at the game jams as well. And that meant, not only in terms of picking which ones win the awards were genuinely the best, but we would then get feedback from the judges and feed that back to all the participants as well. We anonymized it, because it gets too messy if people have their names attached to things and people get grumpy and send nasty emails, it seems. But we'd anonymize it and send this brain dump of feedback back to the participants, not all of which they're going to agree with, but to me, it's super valuable to those people just getting this unfiltered range of thoughts. So not only did they get to hone their skills in doing quite a focused game jam, they got great feedback that they could choose to do anything with or not as they chose. They got their games in front of industry. And to me, it gave participants a chance to show off what they can do. Rather than put the companies on show on my recruitment events, it was letting the participants show what they can do and in a week get their talents in front of industry. So we still want to do more game jams. Something I thought the industry was lacking was a jobs map, like an interactive jobs map, where you saw the whole of the UK and you could scroll around and see where all the different jobs were in the area you were looking for a job in, or you could zoom in and out on the clusters and see how far you might have to move, or see what was closest to you. So my Christmas 2020 holiday was spent creating a list of every active games company in the UK, and officially there's over 2,000, but once we went through all their websites, we realized more than half of them don't even have an active website, so that tells you just how active they are, I think. But we went through every single one of these, and we pulled all the jobs that they were currently listing, that they were advertising for. And then we worked out where their offices were, pulled out lat-long coordinates, and basically plotted all these jobs on our interactive jobs map and put it up on the website. And I was so chuffed when this went live, because there was nothing like this out there at the moment. I thought this was brilliant. Nobody else seemed to think so, because hardly anyone ever used it, which is a real shame. So that felt like a bit of a waste of time. However, I realized we got all this jobs data anyway. People seem to like the simplicity of a jobs board. Fine, let's just stick up a job board. So we stuck up a job board on the site, and that's proven much more popular, even though we're just using some dodgy WordPress plugin at the moment. We are just about to upgrade that to a proper job board. But that's proven a lot more popular. But then what was interesting was the realization that we've got a lot of data here. We've got data on every job going in the UK, and we'd now pulled it together for a couple of months, and realized there's probably some interesting insights if we sort of slice and dice this data and look for trends and comparisons, etc. So in early 2021, we published the first ever UK-wide jobs report, and every single month since then, we research every company's jobs listings, track all that. We categorize each job by discipline, by seniority level, which sector of the industry it's in, what part of the country, how long that job's been advertised for, what the most common job is, all this kind of stuff. And it was brilliantly written up by, I don't know if he's still here, the nicest and most passionate journalist in the industry, Will Freeman. He was in earlier on. He wrote up the first couple of jobs reports for us. And they went down an absolute storm. Now, writing up all these reports is quite a lot of work. So every month, I kind of let out a little groan when I've got to start organising this again. But within half an hour of getting stuck into it, I'm always fascinated by some change or other. Sometimes the changes are reactive to a shift in the industry that we've seen or heard about. And sometimes the changes are a leading indicator of something that has happened but just hasn't been announced yet in the industry. So if all that sounds interesting to you, you're in the right place. We'll talk a little bit more about these jobs data. If it doesn't sound interesting, I'll save you 20 minutes and recommend you go and have a look at System Shock and Street Fighter and keep a place in the queue for me, because that's where I'm going later on. But if you are interested, I'm really pleased to say that just for WASD and the London Developer Conference, we've extracted all the data just for the London jobs. And we have this morning published a London special report for March 2023. So this data is just days old. There'll be a link at the end where you can get the full report. As context, here are the jobs across the whole of the UK. As of right now, there's 1,729 jobs across the whole of the UK that are open. And here's how they're split regionally. I don't know if you can read the numbers, but basically we've got sizable hubs in the likes of the Northwest with 234 jobs, Midlands, or basically just Leamington, with 264, Scotland's got 163. But then 309 jobs are in London itself, making London, unsurprisingly, the biggest single city for jobs across the UK. But then the southeast area has another 390 jobs. Now that includes places like Kent and Brighton that we haven't included in this London special report. They're included in our UK-wide report, but not in the London special report. But the southeast region also includes places like Guildford and Horsham, which are easily commutable. So we've included them in the London and surrounding area definition for the purpose of this report. And that gives us a total of 538 jobs that are going right now in and around London. So if you're a manager or a recruiter and you're struggling to fill just one position right now, you know the pain your team is going through due to that one position not being filled. That's one seat that's sitting empty and everyone else is having to pick up the slack on. Multiply that by 538 to get a sense of how much these recruitment struggles are costing us as an industry. And not that this is much consolation at the moment, but here's how the UK-wide numbers have tracked over the past 12 months. From an all-time post-COVID high in June of over 2,800 jobs, we're down to 1,700 open jobs across the UK this month. And just in the last couple of days, and even this morning, there's rumours of several UK games companies doing further layoffs. So my bet is that these numbers still have a way to fall, and we'll be down below half of that June 2022 peak by the time we get to June 2023. So if you are a manager or recruiter, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. The roles that you're trying to fill have fewer employers competing for the candidates that you're chasing, which is good news, although it probably also means that the candidates currently in stable jobs are less keen to shop around. So whether it actually makes much difference is going to vary by company. We have one page in particular of our monthly report that everyone always clamors to get onto, because we put the logos of the top recruiters, the companies with the most open jobs, on this page. Here it is for London. And if you can recognize the logos, you'll see lots of familiar names there. And just watching how this page changes over the months is absolutely fascinating. Up until January just passed, one of the top recruiters across the whole of the UK was Unity. But a couple of months ago, they talked about removing overlap, I think was their nice way of putting it. They've had some layoffs and they've reduced their open vacancies across the UK from almost 100, I think it was 96 or something in January, to just 7 this month. So they've dropped off this chart completely just in 2 months. So it's amazing how fast it changes. In London, if you just look at the top row, it's actually quite interesting seeing it like this, that most of the big employers are actually not in central London. They're in Horsham and Farnborough and Guildford and Bromley. If you look at the second row, you start to realize that you've got serious competition for jobs coming from the likes of mobile, with Gram Games and Triple Dot, both with quite a lot of vacancies. And to me, it's really interesting to see how household names like Sega and Sony have only the same sorts of numbers of jobs as someone like Feral Interactive, who I don't think I'd previously ever heard of, but they're a Mac and Linux publisher, and a very successful one at that. So once you actually start pulling all this data together, you start to realize actually there's a lot of opportunities in places I've never heard of, and the places I have heard of are not necessarily where the best opportunities are. Here is the top 10 most commonly advertised jobs in London right now. So if I want to go back to commuting to London as a producer, I've got plenty of options, I think. There's no surprises that a lot of these are senior or specialist roles. There's always regular code or art positions coming along, but they don't tend to stay unfilled for very long, whereas these positions are the more senior and the more specialized positions that tend to hang around. They're probably also the ones with the highest consequential cost of having sitting around vacant for months on end, though. So this is quite scary. There's 16 companies sitting without producers heading up their teams. That's quite expensive when you think about each one of those companies. And when you compare back to the same chart from 2 years ago, there's no fundamental difference. A lot of the core dev positions, producers, tech artists, senior game designers, UI artists, are still all high in demand. One of the ones I was surprised to see drop out was senior animator, which was 4th in 2021. Has dropped out the top 10 completely. We're always going to need animators. But also for QA roles to come in this month. But these are just snapshots of a point in time, and maybe just one company opening up a new test department, for example, will skew the numbers once we've gone quite specific like this, looking at individual roles in individual cities. The range of disciplines that these open roles cover always fascinates me as well. Here's the breakdown for the 500 London jobs on the left. So you see, there's 192 code jobs, there's 95 art jobs, and so on. There's no major surprises in the sort of ordering of those, other than in London, we've got about twice as many code jobs as art jobs, whereas if you look at the whole of the UK, it's only about 50% more. And we don't have enough data to understand why that is. Is it that the London teams are somehow more code heavy? Is it that they're doing procedural art? Maybe they're all ChatGPT experts and generating more art than anyone else, I'm not sure. Or is it just there's more turnover of programmers and therefore they have to advertise for them more often because the programmers are moving around more often? We don't have the data to drill into that. On the right-hand side, we compare the percentage of the total roles that each discipline makes up. So, for example, 36% of the roles in London at the moment are code, 18% are art, and so on. And I've included the 2022 figures for completeness, but haven't gone through them. I'm almost inclined to ignore them because if you're following the sort of business side of the industry, there was so much crazy investment and M&A activity in 2022 in particular that I think it gave a lot of companies a misplaced sense of what they should be doing and what they should be planning for. And I'd be inclined to say that comparing to the more sensible levels of 2021 is more useful. And we should treat 2022 as a bit of a blip, a bit of a bubble. So if you compare back to 2 years ago, you can see that the portion of jobs in the traditional disciplines of code, art, design, production, etc. are fairly static. QA positions are down 50%, localization is up by multiple, but again, those disciplines in particular are probably more likely to vary depending on project phases. To me, the ones that were really interesting that I'll keep watch on over the next year are the roles in promotion, so marketing and user acquisition, which are up 50%, and in analytics, which are up threefold. And in many ways, it's good to see that companies are getting more actively involved in understanding their audience and promoting their games actively to their audience rather than just praying that they become the next viral hit. Also interesting is how London's 500-odd jobs split by sort of studio category. So we've got 237, so a little under half the jobs are in AAA, 80 jobs in AA, 71 jobs in indie, etc. These aren't always going to be black and white because not only do we not have formal definitions of what AAA versus AA is, but some studios cover multiple categories. So we've just tried to go with what feels like common sense. And I think most people would predominantly count the likes of Electronic Arts or Creative Assembly as AAA, and someone like Hutch Games or Triple Dot as mobile, even though they've all dabbled in other things as well. So we're seeing about half the 500 jobs in AAA. But if you look at how this varies in London over the last 3 years, and again, discounting some of the silliness of 2022, we see some really interesting trends. So 2 years ago, if I move the slide on, 2 years ago, 60% of the jobs in London were in AAA, and that's dropped to just 44%. And that's not a sign that AAA is in trouble or anything, because if you look at mobile and indie jobs are up by more than double. Mobile's up by 50%. So it's another sign that the market does keep moving around. But it does mean that if you're a candidate that wants to get into a AAA studio, there are fewer opportunities. Not only are the AAA jobs a smaller portion of the available jobs, but it's of a smaller and currently shrinking pool that we saw earlier. But hopefully it's great for the London indie and mobile studios that are growing fast. And here's where there's really some food for thought. When we look at the split of the roles by seniority, so we categorize every role that gets advertised into one of these 4 categories. So management is fairly self-explanatory if there's a lead or a management part of the role. Senior roles are typically for people that have 5+ years in the industry already, experienced is for people with up to 5 years experience. And junior we classify as graduate and entry-level positions. So of the 500, 235 are experienced, 142 senior, 150 management, and 11 junior. So essentially that means 98% of the vacancies that we're all scrabbling to fill need experience. 98%, that's insane. And it's actually worse, because if we look at it over time, over the last 2 years, if you look at junior along the bottom, it's actually gotten worse. I mean, it used to be 96%. We're actually going backwards in terms of creating opportunities for people to join the industry. There's just 11 jobs in our industry across London right now available to junior. There's obviously more across the rest of the UK. If you add in the rest of England and Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's 55 jobs. But that's still not a huge number, particularly when you start thinking about how many people are chasing those 55 jobs. So these are the statistics from HESA, the Higher Education Statistics Agency, for 2020 and 2021, which is the last year they've published statistics for. And they're saying that in that year, there were 3,400 people graduated from a course in a games-related subject. That's not good odds when there's 55 jobs. And what's worse is these statistics don't even include everyone that graduates from non-games specific courses. If someone's just done a general programming degree or a general art course, all those folk that also want to get into games. And these statistics also don't include everyone else that comes from a background that maybe prevents their families taking on tens of thousands of pounds of debt, putting kids through higher education, but who also want to get into games and would have a lot to offer the industry. So it's not 3,400 people every year that we don't have jobs for. It's maybe, I don't know, 50% more, 100% more, who knows? And we could talk about some of the poor standards of some of those expensive courses that leave folk not so well equipped for industry, or we could talk about the lack of industry outreach and involvement to help improve them and create more of those opportunities, or we could talk about the countless arguments about why this is all someone else's problem and we need someone to step in and solve it for us. And any of those would help a bit. But this is not a new problem. Our industry is no longer a new industry. We've been around for, 50 years, 60 years as an industry? For years, decades even, I'm sure we've been saying that our biggest challenge in the industry is recruitment. You know, fundraising, coming up with ideas, executing, those are not our biggest challenges. Recruitment is. The problem is us, unfortunately. I think we're rubbish at training people. We need to take training seriously. For decades, we've struggled to hire senior people whilst amazing juniors come out of university or train themselves up and go off to gain experience in other industries. Just today, I've had several conversations about the number of people going off to film and TV rather than games because they're more open to taking on junior people. We need to change that. And if the studio's complaining about struggling to hire, don't start to commit more of their own time and money into solving their number one problem. Government money thrown at the problem won't solve it for them immediately. We've got to take ownership for this ourselves. So my suggestion is we need to prove that we want to solve our skills gap problem ourselves and take training up our workforce seriously. And this is a whole topic by itself, and there's better people than me to think about this. But some of the ideas that spring to mind that we could do, we need to allocate more time for people to be trained up on the job rather than just having them flat out working towards deadlines all the time. We need to plan ahead more and hire juniors before we need them so that we've got time to train them up, and by the time we actually need them, they'll already be experienced. Make more training budget available, It doesn't need to be a fortune, and to be honest, in most cases, the studios will struggle to justify the time rather than the cost. So usually it's freeing up people to be trained or to do the training that's the real problem. This industry is not short of money. Money is usually not the main problem. We need to assign mentors and foster a spirit of personal growth. We need to take more chances on internal promotions. We need to take more juniors and accept that it's going to take a bit of time to train them up. But once they are trained up, then we're solving our own problem. There's probably 100 things else we can do as well. But this all takes a commitment from the very top. There's plenty the rest of us can do. Trade bodies can encourage us as industry to do stuff. Universities should encourage more people to set up their own business. If somebody sets up their own business, they've got experience. So I'd love to see more entrepreneurship modules in the university courses. Students often think they're helpless, but actually students are the customers in a university. So if there's any students here, lobby your lecturers and course leaders to get entrepreneurship models and modules, or take part in more game jams and get more industry involvement. All of that will give you more experience and make you more employable. And if you just work for a studio, but not in a management position where you can feel you can make the change, you can still lobby your management, you can still lobby your director to allocate time for training and encourage mentoring, etc. So we just need to push everyone. We need to push ourselves, we need to push our managers, we need to push government, trade bodies, but we need to do stuff ourselves rather than complaining about it is always my way. I wouldn't have started Games Jobs Live if I just sat there and went, oh, it's a shame COVID's hit and recruitment's much harder than before. We need to all get off our backsides and do a little bit, and we can actually make a world of difference. So, in the meantime, on that upbeat note, the report about London's jobs is now published. It's downloadable from london.gamesjobs.live. We have 538 jobs in London that we collectively need to fill. So if any of the insights from the analysis behind the report can help anyone do that, you know where to find me. That's my email. Give me a shout, Colin@gamesjobs.live. And if anyone wants to come up, or anyone is from Scotland and wants to come along to my 6 monthly industry events up there, the next ones are in about a month's time. There's more detail up at gamestalks.live. And the newsletter I do that publishes sort of funding and awards and speaking opportunities for anyone trying to start up or grow a game studios, you can sign up to that for free at gamesopportunities.com. So I hope that's given a bit of food for thought. I've overrun, so I've no idea if there's time for questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Colin. Such an interesting report, very useful, I think. Congratulations on the report. Well, I just need 10 seconds because I forgot before, and I think it's very important to thank our sponsor, Microsoft Azure, that made possible this conference, as long as the work of a fantastic team. And for our next session,